Ladies and gentlemen, friends of the Economic Forum, let me introduce to you Ms. Jennifer Morgan. She is the Executive Director of Greenpeace. I don't believe I needed to introduce to you Greenpeace itself, because I think it's the most visible environmental organization around the world, active for around half a century in issues of protecting ecosystems and the world's ability to nurture life. But I guess climate change, climate crisis is the #1 priority for Greenpeace too. And Ms. Morgan is very well known in the organizations fighting against climate change, because she was active on that field even before she joined Greenpeace. So, Ms. Morgan, thank you very much for being with the forum today, and welcome.
Thanks so much. Wonderful to be with you.
Now, I don't know if you share the idea that as we have been living through a health crisis, a pandemic emergency for around 15 months, it's going to be a year and a half soon, other issues, crucial issues like climate crisis, have been a little bit put aside, have been out of the public eye. Do you have the same sense, the same fear?
Well, I think for sure, of course, the world needed to focus on the pandemic. It's been a tragedy all around the world, and we also really focused in on trying to do what we could do to support people during that time. I think in the beginning, there was certainly not much room for any other issues. But I've noticed actually recently that, that the topic is present. Mostly, I think, due to the impacts that are happening around the world that continue no matter what kind of pandemic we may be in. And also because I do see that there are kind of energy coming in, whether it be from President Biden and his summit or other movements that are keeping the issue front and center. So not as much perhaps, but I think because climate change and the emergency is there, it's still quite present, at least in political circles and different, I think, in people's hearts who are suffering from those impacts.
Now, during those months of the pandemic emergency, economic activity has slowed down. At moments, it has practically frozen. International travel has practically stopped. Social mobility has been played down. Did that have any effect? I mean, did that help to reverse? Do we have signs that if we do that, we can reverse harm done to the world's climate?
Well, it is the case that emissions did take a dip for a little while because of the pandemic, but I don't think it's really a model for how we need to address the problem, nor is it sustainable. So what we've seen unfortunately, is that many countries have not put the majority of their recovery funds into more sustainable energy sources, more sustainable mobility sources, investing in that infrastructure, but they've continued to fund fossil fuels, for example. And therefore, you see as economic activity picks back up, that emissions are rising. And I think it's very important that, we don't need to stop moving in order to address the climate crisis. It's possible. In fact, it's not only possible, it's much better as we're building back in a much more sustainable and just way from COVID to do that with the climate emergency in mind. These things have to come front and center together.
I've heard also the argument that if COVID has helped us understand and learn something, is to understand and learn how our life is dependent with the ecosystems, with their health, with their, I don't know how Greenpeace is feeling about that.
Well, I think absolutely, if you look at where pandemics come from, where these diseases come from, oftentimes, and studies are now have shown this and are showing this again, they come from animals who live in the wild. And when those forests are cut back and cut down, and when those animals then come more into contact with humans and carry those diseases, that's certainly one of the key factors. And so this awareness of how interconnected we are in our health and our well-being with nature and the planet, I think has hopefully, I think in many different surveys that we're seeing has been rejuvenated so that people understand we need to change course. We can't keep going on the same pathway that we have, pulling resources out of the earth, cutting down forests, and think it's all going to be okay. It's not. There are many, many different impacts that come from that.
Now, can you help us understand where do we stand? There has been a target to keep down or lower the global emissions. There has been a point in time, 2030, where the world should have lowered its emissions. It seems that we are back on our targets, but where exactly do we stand?
Yes, so under the Paris Agreement, all countries committed to keep global average temperature to 2 degrees, below 2 degrees, and work to keep 1.5 degrees actually in sight. So what that means from an emissions perspective is that we need to have global emissions by 2030 and have them again by 2050. And that means, of course, that developed countries who have way more resources need to be acting even faster and deeper than that. Where we are today, if you look at the UN estimates, we would be at a 3 degrees world, which is something we don't want to even imagine what that could look like. After the recent Biden summit that occurred on April 22nd, there have been some pledges to increase ambition from the United States, from the EU. Despite those being ambitious enough, there's been a bit of a gap closing, according to the Climate Action Tracker, that if those commitments were implemented, we would be more in a 2.4 degree world, which is still too high. So we're far from where we need to be from an ambition and I would say from an equity perspective right now. And that's why we need every country to ramp up their ambition and move into this transformation much more actively than they have up to this point in time.
Mm-hmm. And what is your set of priorities? I mean, the immediate priorities. If I ask you, give me 1, 2, 3 immediate priorities, not just for 2030, but for now, for the months to come, for the immediate years to come.
I mean, immediately, I think that countries need to stop exploring and drilling for oil, gas, and digging out coal. We don't have time for further fossil fuel exploration. We need to keep fossil fuels in the ground. And with that then comes number 2, which is a massive investment in renewable energy, in wind, in solar, and in efficiency. These are all already existing solutions that are affordable now. And I think number 3 would be to really switch into the sustainable mobility systems that we need, which is also possible. These are not long-term investments. These are shorter-term investments that can occur and bring great benefits to people's lives. I think if you give me a 4th, I would put farming on the list as well. There are policies that are being decided right now in Brussels, for example. What kind of agriculture do we have in the future? Do we continue with industrial agriculture that pollutes tremendously? 1/4 of the emissions around the world come from our food system. Or do we shift away from that into eco-agriculture? So those things are our top 3, 4 that countries can do now. There are plans. It's really about political will.
Mm-hmm. I see. Now, if we ask you for a suggestion for Greece, I mean, I understand that in Greece there is an immediate goal, which is to phase out coal from energy production. Energy production is one of the major factors creating climate decline and overheating of the earth. Do you have any idea because we are at the point in time where European funding is on the way. It should be driven towards green economy and blue economy and digital change. Would you have any suggestions as to how we should take advantage of it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's such a priority because of how also vulnerable Greece is to the impacts of climate change. You just need to look at what could happen in Athens to know how urgent it is also for Greece. I think the priorities, my advice would be to invest in, I'll just call it first, a green and just way forward, because we need to have a just transition for the workers who have done an amazing job for us over the years of providing energy services. So in Greece, when that means that you need to also phase out all fossil fuels by 2040, then you need to start that managed transition now. You can't be drilling offshore anymore. You know, Hellenic needs to stop that and focus more on investing onshore. And you use those funds to both create that just transition for those workers, but also to invest in the infrastructure that's needed in order to build out renewable energy. And Greece has amazing renewable energy possibilities, and create those jobs in those sectors. That's where I would really start within Greece. And I think that can happen, you know, right away, and the funds are coming from the recovery fund. There's lots of plans already in place. And yeah, it's actually not rocket science. It's really about political will, as I said, and I think we were heartened to hear the foreign minister recently in his trip to Saudi Arabia actually note that he thought that renewables was a way forward, and that he didn't want to be the Gulf of Mexico. You want to keep the Aegean beautiful in the way that it should be.
I see. Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. But I have a last question, which is, let's see the broader picture. The question is that through the last centuries, every industrial revolution, every technological advancement was felt as detrimental to the Earth's ecosystems. It was bad for the environment. It was good for people's lives or for the economy, but it was bad for the environment. Is it possible that we have arrived in a point of time where we can use technology and technological advancement to reverse damage done by previous technological revolutions and industrial revolutions?
Look, I think that technology will certainly play a role in repairing or advancing, but I think the answer is not technology. The answer is actually systems change. It is about policies and laws that bring about a much more equitable and green future. It's about stopping having a system where just the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. And we need technology. We need renewable energy technology. There is lots there already. So we just need to implement it. And then that, you know, and also be growing our forests at the same time, which has a recovery piece, and taking care of our oceans, because that is such an important piece. So I would depend on our natural systems and protecting them, and then move forward in this transition that we need to from our energy systems, which is possible and can be done justly.
Jennifer Morgan, thank you very much for being with us at the Delphi Economic Forum today. Have a good day. Thank you.
Pleasure to be with you.
Thank you.